Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item is welcome the public to make any comments. Is there anybody here who'd like to speak to the board? If not, then we'll move on to item 3, approval of minutes. You've all received a copy of the minutes. Do I have a motion? Motion by Gil, second by Marion. Any questions, deletions, changes, etc.? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So moved. Chairman's report? No report. We'll move this meeting right along. Mark?
Thank you very much. We'll start with some good news. I'm sure many of you have already read, but it appears that we're going to be getting about $2.5 million from this year's New York State budget. And I want to publicly thank Senator Stafford, Assemblyman Ortloff, our entire team in Albany, including the Secretary of State. It's the third budget in a row that I've been here for anyway, where we've received that kind of an allocation. And once again, we're going to be dedicating it primarily to renovating and updating our rather out-of-date facilities here at PARC. And the good news didn't stop there. The decision has been made that PARC, under the auspices of Clinton County, will be awarded an economic development zone. This is a tremendous achievement, and I would like to, again, publicly recognize and thank the chairman of the county legislature, Don Garrett, and the entire county legislature. As some of you may recall, they are the official applicants for the zone, but PARC will be the zone operator, so to speak. And I've sent a note to that effect to the legislature already. I also want to thank our marketing department, Mike Sherman, and particularly Karen Gosnell, who spent a great deal of time putting that application together, and as it turned out, it was very, very successful. I'm told it'll be several months now before we take the next step forward, but money has been allocated, and we expect to leverage about $1 for every $2 that we can get from the state for this project, along with another 50 cents in in-kind services. So this is going to be a financially healthy proposition for PARC, and of course a tremendous aid in our effort to recruit new business and industry to the North Country. So all sorts of good news from Albany since we last met. And a couple of things that aren't on your reports from the various departments. I'm pleased that we have received official notice from the Base Conversion Agency and the DFAS folks, the Defense Finance and I forgot what the acronym stands for, but it's the people that handle the bills and the payments in Washington. As you know, we, for some time, have been negotiating with them on back utility and back rent payments, and we've come to an agreement with them, and the result is that PARC has saved literally tens of thousands of dollars. And there again, I owe some thank yous to folks like John Nareau and his people in Washington and the DFAS people who have been very cooperative and lenient while we were getting on our financial feet here. And now that we're on our feet and we can and pay these bills up, it's worked out very, very well.
Mark, excuse me.
Sure.
Is that this reference, or is that?
Actually, that's another letter. That's in fact, that was coming up next. You're anticipating as usual. The arrear schedule is a little bit different. What's coming up? Well, let me just give one more
Sure.
second. I want to very quickly give you quick updates on. I can go that right away. There's a bunch of correspondence that we have sent to Washington, and Pete happens to have one in his hand. One of them is a letter to Washington requesting that they consider suspending our rents instead of when a bill to create an authority was introduced at some other point, ideally when the Clinton County IDA was ready to go forward. And we did receive a quick response back from the Department of the Air Force, the BCA, and they've indicated that when we submit to them an approvable public benefit transfer and economic development conveyance application, that our rents will be reduced. And that's very, very good news, and that's a letter from Al Lois. I think most of you were sent it.
Are we looking there for, that's part of my question, they're talking about reduced. We were talking before about zero.
That's my fault. We use those words interchangeably. What they say reduced to their cost, it's effectively nothing as far as we're concerned. Okay, so that's very good news, believe me. Now we're scrambling to get that application together. In fact, that was one of the other items. Our staff will be having a dress rehearsal, working the numbers on our PBT and our EDC this afternoon And at some point, I'm going to try to set up a time where those of you that have the time can come in and take a look at our numbers and look at that whole plan before we send the first draft to Washington. Our goal is to get that approvable application in their hands before the end of this month, if at all possible, because there's a lot of money to be saved. Along those lines, I see Adore Kurtz is here, and she can add to it. Please, Adore, if you wish. The IDA has been outstanding in responding rather quickly to the our turned out successful search for an alternative to an authority. They've passed a couple of resolutions. Our lawyer is talking to their lawyer, which is both a good and bad sign. They're racking up some bills. Some work has begun on the draft lease, but as Adore has pointed out, there's much to be doing in Washington, and we'll have our counsel Jim here in Washington probably in the next week or two to work out the details of the title transfer and the entire process that we have to go through with the Department of Air Force. And right now, I would say that all parties concerned are optimistic that this is going to work out, that we will be able to accomplish our three goals. Number one, that whatever arrangement we concoct, it will be acceptable to the United States Air Force and the Federal Aviation Administration. And we have both of those organizations in writing saying they like the idea. Secondly, that no matter how we set this up, that in no way, shape, manner, or form will either the IDA or, for that matter, Clinton County be in any way responsible legally, financially, environmentally for the actions, errors, and omissions of PARC. And finally, of course, that PARC continue to operate as it has been, as an entity created by all the jurisdictions, independently without any undue interference or encumbrance by any organization. And right now, those three goals seem very, very doable. And we're using, as some of you already have heard, the vehicle known as a straight lease, which can only be done with the IDA. And we're now trying to put together all the details of that lease, everything from tax breaks to approvals and so on and so forth. But we're very optimistic that's going to work for us. Along those lines, the other correspondence that was sent to Washington includes a decision from the BCA as to our central heat plant. As you know, they can save money if we shut it down. We can make money if we shut it down. So we're looking at that, and we've asked them to take a look at the numbers. We've also talked to them about the situation, which I have to say candidly is worsening with respect to our leases. It's taking us longer and longer to get our subleases approved. And we're also into disagreement, respectful, but nevertheless a disagreement with the BCA as to our water rates. And that's all some of that correspondence that I've been peppering you as board members with. And this week, we hope to get answers on most, if not all, of those questions. We will need, before we break up today, a formal resolution authorizing the contract award for the Rail Link project to Luck Brothers Construction. It's a local company that was the apparent low bidder, and our engineers and lawyers have recommended they be given that bid, and we, although have given them informal permission to go ahead and order materials, we need a formal resolution allowing the CEO to enter into that contract, and that should be done before the end of this day. And another quickie, despite all the publicity and the legal ad that appeared in the paper, and a letter to every single member of the Chamber of Commerce that was a lawyer, a customs broker, and an accountant, the committee that was put together to decide which lawyers, accountants, and customs brokers we can use for our red carpet days may not have to meet. All the responses are in. We received responses from 3 legal firms, from 3 customs brokers, and from 3 accountants. It was our decision, as you remember, to utilize the 3 most qualified firms from each of those categories. So the marketplace has made the decision for the committee. The committee may still meet if they wish and review the qualifications. But I was very pleased with the responses, and I'll leave that up to you whether you want to talk about that some more. And finally, at some point, maybe toward the end of the meeting after we reconvene after the executive session, we did put out a request for qualifications for an attorney that would work for PARC and be paid. But I've already told the chairman that given that he has a son in the business, that he should excuse himself. So if we can hang on to the chairman to the very end of this meeting, I'm going to ask the chairman to excuse himself, and I'd like to discuss that with all of you. in open session. And, let's see, that's that. That's all I have, except that we have 2 contractual situations and 1 personnel situation, and a pending real estate transaction that I would like to discuss in executive session.
Okay. Any questions
That's as
for
quick as I
Mark?
can go.
Yeah, I do.
Yes, Pete?
First one would be, apparently had a meeting with Pat Lucia at Plattsburgh Housing Authority, April
Yes.
13th.
Yep.
Could you bring us up to date?
We received some correspondence from Pat, and I think it's fair to say that the Housing Authority was getting frustrated with the apparent lack of progress after the October commitment of PARC to go ahead and transfer up to 150 some odd units of renovated housing units that lie within the city to the Housing Authority. I wrote back to Pat and agreed that a meeting should occur. However, with all due respect, we weren't at all sure that PARC had to take any steps. It was pretty much up to the Housing Authority in the city. So we had a very, very productive meeting. It turned out to be very, very positive. I think she understands some of the issues at hand. She understands that we are amenable to whatever it takes to get the project moving. I did, Marion, and I want credit for this, remind her that our commitment on the housing had 1 provision in it. It had to do with the change of that boundary at the north end of the runway. But I also said, as the board has said repeatedly, that we're amenable to either assisting them in a direct request for a public benefit transfer from the Air Force through HUD to the Housing Authority, or if they wanted to wait until we took title, then the title transfer could occur from PARC to the Housing Authority. I think that Pat was out of the loop for a while, for reasons good and bad, and having to do, frankly, most with the city, not with PARC. But now she's back in the know, and she's concerned about funding, and this is going to be a tremendous challenge for the Housing Authority. They need individual heating units out there. There's code requirements that have to be made, having to do with their garage. This is not as easy as it looked, I think, initially, and she's just beginning to figure that out. So it's their move next. There's no action required on our part.
And it's with the understanding that we get that line change.
Yeah, that was very clear. I gave her copies of the resolutions and the minutes showing all of that stuff. Does that answer your question, Pete?
Yep. And as far as the next one was back to the lakefront issue with the city. Have we put that back into the city's lap now? Is that where we are?
We sent a letter to the city saying, these are the conflicts with the proposed boundary change. Initially, they had proposed that the westernmost boundary of the right-of-way for the recreation trail be the railroad right-of-way. They have since come back with a change saying they want 20 feet additionally west of the roadway. You all saw that. Our buildings and ground staff did a marvelous job in assessing what the impact of that extra 20 feet would be. And unfortunately, there are literally several dozen conflicts, including but not limited to a sewage pump station, I think at least 2 or 3 buildings. There are roadways, so on and so forth. And so we gave them a written recitation of all those conflicts and asked as to how they were going to resolve that. And they've since written back and saying that they don't see any problem. What we'd like to do is have a meeting and go through all that and figure out how they're going to work it out.
Did they see the memorandum that Doyle did? for
Yes.
you?
Yeah, that was.
And they said they didn't have any problem?
Well, they don't see a problem with it, but we have to work out the details. There's an awful lot of conflicts there, and we're not certain how they're going to do it. Understand, we're not trying to delay or hold up here, but I think when you've got a list of, excuse me, Peter, there's 11 different items there where the right-of-way would conflict with either physical or legal obstacles. Somehow this has to be worked out before the title's transferred.
Did you
It's
say,
all
Mark,
workable.
that there's a meeting scheduled?
No, there isn't, and I've asked for one, but we haven't gotten together yet.
Because before it becomes an issue again, it'd be good if we could meet and attempt to address the issue out of the newspaper.
Yeah. Well, I always get good press. I have no complaints with the press Republican. Yeah, I'll see if I can't set up a meeting with the city this week. So far, I haven't answered any of your questions. Keep
Well, we're
going.
going. That's what I get for missing a meeting. Under special projects, vapor project,
Yes,
is that synonymous with LABCO? or-
yes.
It is.
Vapor was actually purchased by Westinghouse Air Brake Company.
Okay. And in that particular lease, has the number of square footage been reduced on that?
Yes, it has. I think that was the meeting that you were missing, as a matter of fact.
We initiated that at 64,000?
Closer to 65 or 66, with a commitment for 150 jobs. The job commitment has remained the same. However, the square footage for manufacturing has been reduced to a single bay in the Bay Supply Building, and a warehousing type operation will occur in the other 34,000. Dan, correct me when I make a mistake. 33.3. Okay. We think
So
that
the total leasable area is what?
it's still.
66, 67.
Oh, it's just
But-
that it's switched from
We can't
manufacturing to
charge the
warehouse?
same, I don't want to get into the rates in a public, but we can't charge the same if they're going to use it for warehousing and storage versus manufacturing. I think it's fair to say, and I don't want to put words in Westinghouse Airbrake's mouth, that it's only going to be a short period of time where they end up utilizing the balance for manufacturing. And it's stipulated in our agreement with them that when they do so, the rent will go back to market rates.
Did we have to make an adjustment in the leasehold improvements based on the change of use?
No. We have a tremendous amount of money that we're putting into that building for leasehold improvements. Fortunately or unfortunately, the vast majority of the investment we have made, and we've used all grant monies from the state to do that, not our own funds, the vast majority of those improvements have been necessary things that would be done regardless of the tenant. Dan, why don't you just summarize what the nature of that project is, where the money's going?
The project originally started out with the lease commitment to take over 66,000 square feet of a 100,000 square foot building. Bombardier took over 33,000 on the other end for some assembly. That covers the whole 100,000 square feet. The $131,000 was to go into the Bombardier side. That side of the project came in at about 127. The main side of the building, we had received state funding for $750,000 to cover the renovation and construction of that building. And we went a little bit over budget to about $1.2 million, okay?
Just a little.
What we did, some of the considerations that were taken into effect was the fact that with the central heat plant shutting down, $300,000 of it had to go into the central heat plant, or the individual heating system, okay? Because the construction-based side is a lot of office space, that cost ended up being about $2.65 a square foot for the office space side, which includes heating and air conditioning, and about $2 a square foot on the pure warehousing side. When we started into it, Vapor had cut back, we were going to scale down the project. But instead, Vapor came back and said, we'll take on the warehousing space because the governor's office is working with them on trying to lure in some additional work here. So the project pretty much went on accordingly. Vapor is putting $100,000 or $89,900 into the project. NISAC contributed $25,000 to the project for the central heat system. All in all, if you add it all up, we have a contingency program we're taking against the 750. That's going to use up about $50,000 or $75,000, and the project is coming with a shortfall of about $103,000. Okay, the $103,000 is made up though of a lot of the work that our tenant services or the caretaker people had to do. So we're looking at where that falls into the caretaker budget, and the project will probably.
Yeah, where's the
come out
bulk
ready.
of the money going in terms of the, I want you to understand that the bulk of the money goes to improvements that have nothing to do with the tenant.
We are doing, most of the tenant-specific improvements, Peter, are being picked up by Vapor, the $90,000 in North they're doing. The bulk of our money is going for leasehold improvements to a facility that was in dire need of a lot of work. Also making it more viable in the marketplace. We're putting loading docks in each bay.
New electrical
New
services.
electrical services, et cetera, et
Are
cetera.
you doing installation work or not?
Yeah, we're doing some installation work, we're painting it.
Lighting?
The lighting, you know.
And so it'll be transformed over independently as far as the heating system.
Yeah.
Yeah. The basic item in the overrun is the individual heating system for that building. However, at the same time, we're hoping that the Air Force will come through for us, and if we all agree that the central heating plant has to be shut down, we will get a payout whose purpose is to install individual heating systems in a variety of buildings. And of course, base supply would have been one of them. So what we may very well be looking at here is a temporary cost overrun on that building. And then if and when the BCA pays us out for the central heating plant, we'll just have that much extra money to install an individual heating system elsewhere. I think it has to be remembered as we do these leasehold improvements that this isn't a situation that would never have occurred in the marketplace. If Barie, for example, were to spend $12.50 renovating an existing building, $12.50 a foot renovating an existing building, we'd all run her out of town. But here at PARC, when the job is to work with the buildings you have, and you get the benefit of our team in Albany's largesse, so to speak, it's almost like playing Monopoly. It's funny money. But the important thing is that the 150 jobs has been preserved, and I can't go into the details in public session, but I think that Westinghouse Air Brake is here to stay, and you're going to be hearing much more from them in the months to come. It's a good investment for us.
One last on them.
Sure.
We're talking 150 jobs. How are we phasing? And right now, we only have about what out there? Very little.
Well, we're still renovating the building. We've
You
got
got
a
anybody here from-
handful of people.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you're going to see
How's that phasing?
probably 60 jobs, well, let's say 50 to 60 jobs within the first 6 to 8 months, and then it's going to go very rapidly from there.
And this is supposed to be done,
So
the improvements for them to move.
we
in.
hope to have that thing mostly in and done by the fall, then, earlier? You know?
Earlier, Vapor is looking to move in May
Well,
15th, May
quicker
10th.
than that.
We're on schedule for that?
We're on schedule.
It's been tough.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I have a
Marion?
question, Mark. How many bidders were on the rail project? And who were they?
The deadline hasn't been reached yet, Marion? Oh, you mean the Rail Link project?
Yeah, the Rail Link
I'm sorry.
project. Yeah, the Rail Link project.
Oh, I was thinking of the terminal operator. We have a set of RFQ out for the terminal operator. Who in my staff can remember that?
Eric,
Eric? Oh, there he is,
There
great.
were 4 bidders, Luck Brothers, a company called AP Rail out of Ticonderoga, and the other 2 companies escape my memory right now. They were both, one of them was from Connecticut, the other one was from the Albany area.
We're, the Rail Link project, if you remember, Marion, is closely supervised and almost entirely funded by the New York State Department of Transportation. And so we answer to them in many respects because this is their $1.9 million that we're spending. It was 1.5, and we managed to eke out of them another 400,000. So they have been right alongside us as we put out the RFPs, reviewing the bids, and they'll be there with us as we put the final contract together, so on and so forth. They are in agreement with the way in which it was done and the award that has been made.
Any other questions? Okay. Committee reports. Gil, do you have anything, since Henry's not here on finance?
No, we didn't meet, but
Okay.
we'll be meeting this month. I'll make mention to Julie.
Very good, thank you. Anything under old business? Anything under old business, or new business, rather, excuse me? Do you want that formal resolution on the rail link front?
Yeah, at any time before you break up.
Do I have a motion to award the bid for the rail link
The bid amount is how much?
to?
Yep, actually, to be, allow me to enter into a contract with them, because the bid amount's gonna change. We're contemplating a significant change order right now. So if you don't mind making it unspecific, I'd appreciate it.
Motion made by
The change
Gary.
order won't conflict with the other bids, though, will it, Mark?
No, we're allowed to do certain change orders once it's been awarded.
Second by Gil. Any questions, further questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so moved. Okay, I need a motion to go to executive session. Or better yet, why don't I open the meeting to public comment first, and then we'll go to executive session. Does anybody from the public wish to ask questions or make comment? Yes, sir.
I'm wondering what the status of the authority bill was that everybody worked so hard on for so long. All of a sudden, it dropped out of public sight. We seem to think now we have the answer to this, but there's always the possibility of stubbing our toe there. So what is the status of the authority bill?
Kenny, I wish you'd ask me an easy question just once. The status of the bill is that while it was in draft form here locally, and we had virtually unanimous agreement on virtually all aspects of the bill never was introduced in Albany, okay? Our elected officials had draft copies of it. we're in the process of dotting the i's and crossing the t's and putting it in legally presentable form, when it became apparent in our discussions with the elected officials that the bill, when it officially arrived in Albany, would be stillborn, if I could use that term. So the exact status of the legislation is that it was never introduced. At the time, it became apparent that the bill was not going to go anywhere. Once it officially arrived in Albany, there began another search. There had been a number of searches in the past, but there began another search for an alternative to authority status. And there was a great deal of work on the part of our Congressman John McHugh in Washington and the entire team in Albany when the subject of using the IDA came up once again. And I have to tell you frankly that when the IDA came up 9 months ago, there weren't too many people in Washington that even wanted to consider the possibility. There was also concern at the time about the liabilities that could accrue to the IDA and or the county were they suddenly to find themselves in a position of ownership here out at the base. Both of those obstacles were overcome, I think because of the lateness of the hour and the effectiveness of our congressmen. Both the Federal Aviation Administration and the Office of Economic Adjustment, Department of the Air Force, Department of Defense rather, saw fit to rule that they could work with an IDA as a pass-through agency. Secondly, George Craig, who is the bond counsel for Adore's organization, and our own attorney, Jim Heery, got together and talked with me and with each other, and they have a great deal of experience, and they were very persuasive that this could be set up in such a way that PARC could continue to operate independently, but yet the county and the IDA in particular would accrue no liability. So with those hurdles out of the way, the alternative suddenly became the solution, and the original proposal of the authority, as you said, fell by the wayside. And I don't think it's productive to engage in trying to assess blame or to speculate openly about whether time was wasted or not. This is not an exact science trying to figure out what to do with a slightly used Air Force base. I think it's a credit to the local elected officials that despite the fact that it took us many months, we did reach agreement on the authority. I know there are a lot of people who said, well, you wasted all that time. I'm not sure it was wasted. I think that some bridges were built and some understandings were had, and they will be useful whether we're going forward with an authority or whether we're going forward with the IDA. Most importantly, though, we're going forward. That's the bottom line, and I think in that sense, it's good news for everybody.
To make a long story short, though, the bill is in a form now when it could be presented to the legislature if something happened to the IDA solution.
Yes, we could get a copy of that bill in pretty clean form down to Albany within a matter of days if necessary.
One of the reasons that was given by our assemblymen for not pursuing this was the fact that Silver had turned down all bills for the ice storm aid and whatever, and then all of a sudden, they came through.
Mhm.
So, I don't think that you can close the door there if in fact, something happened to the IDA.
Mhm.
I don't think there's any guarantees with the IDA, is there?
Not yet. We still have to get the paperwork done. We have agreement in principle between us and the IDA and the Department of the Air Force and Department of Defense and the FAA. But as many have often said, the devil is in the details. And but I do have some experience with straight leases. Before this life, I helped start the IDA in the town of Champlain. At one point, we were the most active IDA at the town level in the state of New York. And I've got a little over a dozen bond issues under my belt. I'm familiar with straight leases, and I believe that legally this is quite doable.